This just in, FBI Director Christopher Wray has agreed to deliver a subpoenaed memo to House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer. The document alleges that during his vice presidency, Joe Biden engaged in a bribery scheme to change U.S. policy in return for $5 million to his family's businesses. The allegation has not been corroborated. Jessica, this is sort of the latest allegation in this idea that the Biden family is basically a crime syndicate exchanging access to then Vice President Joe Biden for money from various foreign governments. James Comer has alleged in the past that basically there were a bunch of shell companies set up so that the family could filter in millions of dollars from China and Romania and Ukraine. Although this document in particular is apparently not corroborated by any witnesses.
Yeah, I think that's key here. We don't really know much about this document. We don't know the contents of it. We're not sure about the informant when it came through. We know that Joe Biden was vice president at the time, but we're not really sure what the FBI's process was for determining the legitimacy of the claims in the document. And so for it to resurface now, and be relitigated when Biden is in office. I guess it was never really litigated because what happens in the FBI is their own business. It's not the work of the DOJ or something of that nature. And so, yeah, we're in a weird situation. I think at this point, if we were to make something like this public record or have this be hashed out in the public arena like it is, it makes sense that people know what was in the document and why the FBI didn't pursue investigating it further when Biden was in office.
Yeah, and what's interesting about this particular document is that originally, apparently, the FBI Director Chris Wray didn't even acknowledge that it existed until the House Oversight Committee sought to subpoena it. Then he said, well, yeah, actually, we do have it. But then he tried to refuse to give it to them at all. Senator Chuck Grassley, for example, went after Director Wray for refusing to hand over the document, saying, that he should give it. And he finally conceded just before our show this morning. Here's a clip of Senator Grassley talking about the fact that Wray was reluctant to hand this over.
It's an unclassified document. He admits it exists, and we aren't interested in whether or not the accusations against Vice President Biden are accurate or not. We're responsible for making sure the FBI does its job, and that's what we want to know.
Okay, Senator, let me stop you there. You just said you read the document, is that right?
Yes.
Then what did it say?
Well, I'm not going to characterize it. We're going.
So he doesn't want to say anything until it's made public. But having the former FBI director acknowledge its existence, having Grassley say, that it does exist, I've read it, I'm not going to say anything about it on television until it's made public, I think makes perfect sense. But it does seem like pretty soon we're going to understand the nature of the contents of the document. And what is this going to do in terms of adding fuel in the fire of the Hunter Biden case? So we have Hunter Biden having his personal finances hashed out in a court at the state level because he has the mother of his child in a case with him where the finances will likely be revealed. It's a case he brought to the court because he wanted to essentially relitigate his child support payments, which are pretty high, $20,000 a month. But it really opened the door for a full public exploration of his personal finances. And the lawyers on the case are two attorneys out of Wisconsin that were also the same attorneys on the case after the 2020 election alleging fraud on behalf of Donald Trump. And so what a tricky situation. But they will stop at nothing to figure out what the Biden family has been up to and what their finances look like. I think many people who are high-level politicians in the United States are likely up to some pretty unsavory things in terms of their involvement with multinational corporations. That's just been a pattern of behavior. So to me, it's not surprising. But we know how this is going to play out, right? We know that the Republicans are going to report on this incessantly, as they should, as Democrats should as well. Even though he's a Democrat, we should all care about corruption in the country, but I can see this playing out in a very partisan way.
Yeah, I mean, your point about the Hunter Biden child support case is really important because I think it really gets to the heart of the reason that all of this is up for investigation now, and it's that Hunter Biden has kind of brought this on to himself and to his family through his decades of reckless behavior. I mean, this laptop that was left behind at the computer repair shop, the fact that he allegedly lied on this gun form where he was trying to purchase a firearm and claimed that he didn't have any felony convictions, and then asking to reduce the child support payments. And when you're in a civil case like this, you're not allowed to just not give access to your finances. You're not allowed to plead the fifth. If he gets subpoenaed to come testify, he'll have to unveil every bit of financial transactions that were happening with these foreign companies. And the heart of his baby's mother's, for lack of a better term, allegation or claim that he should be paying the $20,000 a month in child support is that he has all of this hidden money from the China energy company that he was sitting on the board of, from Burisma, and now apparently from this Romanian allegedly corrupt official who was giving $1 million to the Biden family businesses as well. So all of this is going to be in play, and it's solely due to the fault of Hunter not keeping his business in order.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel for the mother of Hunter Biden's child, right? You have a baby that you need to take care of. And can you imagine being approached by attorneys that were fighting the allegations of fraud, or fighting on behalf of the allegations of fraud, right? Trying to make it so that more votes were added in Wisconsin for Donald Trump. These are people that were doing the bidding of Donald Trump, that were attorneys that were taking cases that there were very little evidence for, many of which were thrown out of court. And these lawyers approach you and they say, hey, listen, I know you're trying to take care of your child, but we have this huge political agenda. We're trying to take down the head of state. So maybe if you could just let us work with you, we'll give you, some pretty good legal expertise here. It's a crazy situation that a baby mama could take down a head of state. That's American politics today. But not to be crude about it, this is someone's personal life, and it's being played out on center stage. And honestly, that's the consequence of living in a family where you have this much power and influence and money, and it's tied up with foreign influence. And instead of peacefully retiring after serving for so long in the Senate and the vice presidency, you decide you want to be head of state yourself. Like, these are the consequences of living that life. Hunter Biden didn't choose to be born into this family, and I kind of feel for him for that. But when I think about the power and influence of the elites in America, it gets messy. This is what happens. And a case like this is something that could set a precedent for what corruption the American people are willing to turn their eyes away from.
Yeah, exactly. And the Biden family has a history, even just without the foreign entanglements, of really trying to trade influence on their last name. It's why they're trying to prevent Hunter's baby mama from giving Navy the Biden last name, because they basically don't want this idea of a bastard child or a love child having that same panache as a well-bred member of the Biden family. And it's all just really disgusting. Not to mention that Joe Biden's brothers, particularly James Biden, was using his brother as an incentive for people to do real estate business with him. It's really just par for the course with this family. They're basically like the reject Kennedys. And it feels like the chicken's coming home to roost.
Yeah, it seems to me that the bar has been set too low by the Democrats, because their response to this was essentially, well, if it's Hunter Biden doing his business dealings or members of the Biden family, that doesn't have to do with Joe Biden himself. If this doesn't influence any policy he was working on as it pertained to trade deals or what have you with foreign business interests, then it's not a big deal. But it is always a big deal when you have the family of the vice president, now president, doing work abroad. Like, they're always going to be interacting with people and corporations that they have the power to influence and make wealth flow in their direction a little bit more. That's something that is not unique to the Biden family, but it's like Occam's razor. Like, we're not being conspiratorial here about what's in this document or what could be happening. A lot of Biden's family's business dealings have played out in public, and it's not surprising to me that there are people who have informed the FBI of some stuff stuff that went on that made them uncomfortable, because a lot of that stuff has come to surface at this point already, whether it's real estate, as you mentioned, or folks taking overseas trips to meet with foreign leaders. A lot of it's already evidence. And so when we talk about corruption, I'm not just saying someone explicitly making a deal that might pertain to trade deals he was working on. I think any kind of foreign business dealings being done by the member of a family that's at the head of state sounds like corruption to me.
Exactly. There's just necessarily something untoward about it when you're supposed to have the best interest of the U.S. at heart, but you are receiving a financial incentive to make things better for another country's foreign dignitary or head of state or whatever corrupt business officials might be doing business there as well. And back to this document, Chris Wray has to be very careful here because the Durham report just came out indicating all of the mistakes, and I use mistakes very loosely here, that the FBI made during the Crossfire Hurricane investigation. There was very little evidence, if any, to even open that investigation in the first place. We already know that they fabricated FISA warrants to try to spy on members of the Trump campaign, and decline in the FBI, or trust in FBI as the institution, is at an all-time low. It has declined significantly over the past 5 to 10 years, and that's not just because of right-wing crazies or conspiracy theorists or Bernie people who are suspicious of, federal spying and involvement. It's a real issue that has come about because of the FBI's own actions. And so they need to take a good hard look at themselves and say, is it really worth us keeping this document, which might not even prove to be true in the first place, and giving that perception that we're continuing to try to cover up for someone who might be a corrupt head of state? Or do we hand it over and allow the Republicans to continue this investigation, and which could potentially clear Biden? I mean, we don't know. I don't suspect that that's the case, but at the very least, they should be forthcoming with their information to help make up for the fact that they have made so many grave political errors over the past few years.
Yeah, I think the way the FBI has been evidence to investigate citizens who are organizing, who are just grassroots organizers, who want to live their life in a certain way, who seem like they're threats to corporate interests in the United States, that they get more attention and an investigation than a head of state. I think that's really what they're afraid of, is that this document might seem legitimate, might seem like something worth investigating. And I think the response on their part might be something along the lines of, we didn't see enough evidence to investigate this. And that's a really tough sell when so many people are aware of the FBI's history of spying on and investigating their own citizens and taking that kind of action, and now apparently holding people in office with high influence and a lot of power and a lot of money to a completely different standard than the American people who are grassroots organizers. And for the FBI to also be getting so many tips about people who could be potential threats, who could be potential mass shooters, who could be involved with extremist groups, and not taking action on those tips. How many times do we have to hear about a mass shooter who had been tipped off to the FBI as a potential threat? I think that's really another source of degrading trust in the FBI as an institution as well.
Absolutely, not to mention their failure to investigate the Larry Nassar case in U.S. gymnastics. Their list of failures is long and very, very disturbing. We'll be back with more Rising after this.